Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Invasion Nation Morning Show, brought to you by yours truly, Redneck Invasion. Also, don't forget to check us out on our other platforms, YouTube, uh, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, all that shit. Oh, also want to give a big shout out to the people who keep me going every morning, every day. I'm Scrooge, KJ's Quick Stop in Candy, Minnesota. Thank you very much. Also, good morning, Ruger wife. Chad, good morning, Ruger. Jerry, good morning. Matt, good morning. Farmer Trucker, good morning. Little Miss Airhorn. Clinton, USMC, Penny LaRue, good morning. Junebug. Jerry, good morning. And designed by Terry, good morning. I think I got everybody so far. So, never back down, good morning. Wax on hair off. Asshole Incorporated. So, it seems that I've spurned some debate. I've been called a racist because of my feeling and standing on the Black Business Week. Bubba, good morning. Jody, good morning. I've been being labeled a racist because of my standpoint on Black Business Week. And I said, why is it racist? Well, because you don't understand. What do you mean I don't understand? Well, our ancestors, I'm Irish, mine were too. So it became it came down to, and of course there's no arguing with keyboard warriors because they're always right. And the thing is it's like, okay, I understand that you don't like my viewpoint. But what you don't understand is the government uses shit like this they put you on these little fucking pedestals. They put you on these little fucking pedestals to make you feel good about yourself, and that way if somebody says something about it, you do exactly what you're doing. You get offended, you get pissed off, and you call everybody a racist. So you and I can't stand together and say, hey, the government's fucking us. We're not allowed to say that, But heaven forbid you'd use some fucking common sense to see that. Boss lady, good morning, good to see you. Little Miss Airhorn, you have fun down there at the old, the old Valley Fair. So, I haven't been down there in years. But, yeah, I don't know. It was kind of one of them discussions. I don't mind getting into discussions. I don't mind, having a conversation with somebody, and explaining and expressing why I feel the way that I do. But at the same point in time, it's like, why in the fuck? I laid it all out in the show. I'm accepting the pain. Yeah. I've bad enough I'm getting the hair dragged off my body. Now you want to blow out my fucking eardrums. Great. So, yeah. Anyways, the discussion really absolutely went nowhere because you guys know me. I typically ask why, what, like my question, what makes me racist? Well, the fact that you don't support Black Business Week. I said, would you support White Business Week? It's really simple questions. I don't understand when you lay it out very simply how people can't see it. They're pissed off and they don't want to see it any other way. It's like, all right, would you support White Business Week? I got no answer. None. Don, good morning. Good to see you. Yeah, I got absolutely no answer out of the deal whatsoever. And I'm like, yeah.
I've fallen, and I can't get up.
And I literally, I just get bored with the conversations, and I quit talking to them. So, in other news, Donald Trump, even despite his war against the squad, is at an all-time approval rating, and the squad's approval rating even lower. You know, the problem we're gonna have with Ilhan Omar is in her district is a lot of women's lib just want her up there because she's a woman. Kripner, good morning, good to see her. There's a lot of women's lib people that want her up there just because she's a woman. Other people want her up there just because she's black. Other people want her up there just because she's Somalian. Not the fact that she's doing any good for this country. Not the fact that she's literally criticized every veteran that she's ever been put in front of her. She's criticized every member of law enforcement. She's criticized, uh, this country from one end to the other. Ah, yeah. Beautiful. I love bagpipes. I don't want my ears. I don't need them, I swear. Who the fuck needs eardrums? Who needs eardrums, right? Fuck it. Oh. Yeah, the whole idea and concept behind, it would be different. Leave the sounds alone today. Yeah.
Do you suck dicks?
Sir, no, sir.
Bullshit, I'll bet you could suck a golf ball through a garden hose.
Sir, no, sir.
The issue in turn becomes, at what point in time do we quit looking at people? You tell me not to judge you based on the color of your skin or your religion or the fact that you're a female, but you got elected on all those merits. And the fact that you're a refugee, you got elected on all those merits. So I'm not supposed to. You tell me not to judge you based on those merits, but means you got elected on them. You didn't get elected on your political views. You never got elected on your political views. You didn't get. I mean, literally, you and your quote unquote squad voted against humanitarian relief for children on the border, which is a thing that you've made your whole case against Donald Trump on, and that you're doing it to teach him a lesson. You're not teaching Donald Trump shit. What are you going to teach him? I mean, seriously. What are you? What exactly are you going to teach him? I mean, just like the joke that Donald Trump said. What's the difference between a wet raccoon and Donald Trump's hair? A wet raccoon doesn't have $9 billion fucking dollars in the bank. What is she going to tell him or teach him? You're not. So you're going to use these kids, which you quote unquote say are political pawns. You're going to use them as political pawns. Now, AOC and I forgot the other two, Talib from Michigan, and I forgot where the other lady's from. But yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's asinine. People are actually supporting this, and I guess really nobody's really supporting it. A lot of Democrats came on at first, but then they're starting to realize how bad this is actually hurting their party. They're realizing how bad this is looking. I believe Robert Mueller testifies today also. And this is another witch hunt that has just gone stupid. Of course, mainstream media is trying to play it up like, oh, Donald Trump and his staff's trying to get down or make sure that Mueller doesn't say this and Mueller doesn't say that. He doesn't give a shit. You can read the entire report for yourself. you can read the entire report for yourself. Okay, there's no point even going through this. There's nothing there. What is the point? Impeachment has been voted down. All right. William Barr already said there's no obstruction. Robert Mueller already said that there's no collusion. What the hell's the point? What are we doing? What are we wasting tax? What are we at? Like $40 million right now? $40 million I think we're close to on this shit already. And I think Donald Trump is in the process of working out policy or something to make sure that this never happens to a president again. This is absolutely asinine. I mean, you've got Democratic Congress people saying, "Well, I just want to hear Robert Mueller read it." The Mueller report in audio form now available at the U.S. Congress, and it's all going to come at the cost, I don't know what, a couple $1 million. But I don't know. I haven't read through the entire Mueller report. My problem is I don't want to waste time on a document that was based on false pretenses. You know, it was really based on false pretenses. It was based on a document and a false FISA application that was information gotten by the Democratic Party, basically paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign, and then was never vetted. And these warrants came down the pipeline. Yes, some people went to prison for tax evasion or whatever, but at the same point in time, you did nothing. You got nothing accomplished at what you said it was going to do. You put this country in an uproar for 2.5 years for what? For what? Nothing. You've tried your best to turn an entire country against a president. What do they call that? A media haiku? I mean, seriously. Total complete waste of time, money, because they are too lazy to read it for themselves. Yeah. Well, with the money that they said, with the money that they've put out there, I'm surprised they didn't hire somebody to read it for them. Democrats, no, they can't win the election with Trump in office. Well, yeah, I mean, the more they do, the higher his ratings go up. The American people are just getting thoroughly fed up. You heard Steve Drez is going after Lionel Marfil-Thrati, has a petition for investigation, and started a webpage about her. I think her days are numbered. Actually, he was one of the people that went after her for misuse of campaign contributions. Also, this is an investigation that started on her way back when she was here in Minnesota. And people have been pushing on it. But like Muhammad Noor, you know, they keep trying to raise her up to be the poster child of Minnesota. And look at how diverse Minnesota is. But the thing is you're doing it wrong. You're doing it completely wrong. When people are pointing shit out, why don't you do the right thing and say, hey, yeah, she did this shit wrong. We need to investigate this. But no, we've already got this much invested in her. We're just going to keep trying to cover it up, push it away. Well, now too many people know. Too many people know, and too many people have had enough. And she's literally just pissed off the entire country. I mean, she has a 9% approval rating, people. Come on. As a congresswoman, she has a 9% approval rating. 9%. Enough is enough. Trigger Chad, good morning, everybody. On my way back from Grand Forks today. Will you keep her on the road, keep her between the ditches, and keep the rubber on the pavement? Yeah, mainstream media is not going to cover it much, just like Muhammad Noor and all the shit that he did. They didn't cover much until finally he actually killed an innocent bystander. Until he actually killed an innocent bystander, and then everything comes to light. So, do they even know how to read? Going after her for immigration fraud could get her deported, and absolutely, she's proven by her statements, by everything she said, that she is not proud to be anything American. She has made it very well known that she does not like America. When asked about her district, why her district is the number one recruiting ground for terrorists, she doesn't do anything or say anything about it. She just says, bring in more. She says the civil liberties of Muslims are being stepped on constantly, which is a lie. I mean, hello, they get more religious freedom in the workplace than any other religious group out there. Don, it all depends on, right now, it's based on her district. There's not a whole lot the rest of us can do other than showing support to the people who are after her on an investigation. There isn't a whole lot we can really do about it. Justin, as soon as I figure out, here's the thing. I always, when it comes to freshman Congress people, I always have high hopes. I always have high hopes. And that's the thing. I've always had high hopes about it. But again, when her first tweet in office is, anything Trump is for, I'm against, I don't, yeah. That just goes to show me that you're not willing to work across party lines. You need to go. You automatically just broke it right then and there. When you post pictures of Israel completely written off the map, that's when you make anti-Semitic comments and anti-Christian comments, and then you sit on a main stage talking about you're about humanity and things like that, and the fact that you've been on record saying that you believe Sharia law, which means by Sharia law she wouldn't even be in Congress. She wouldn't be talking to, she wouldn't be able to talk to the people that she talks to, or talk the way she talks, period. And then when, because everything she's done is criticize America, Donald Trump makes this simple statement of, if you don't like it, go back to your country. And now it's a racist thing. And as a matter of fact, he said, why don't you go back to your country, fix it, and come back here and tell us how you did it? I would have said the same thing. So, oh yeah, she gets extremely angry immediately when and the thing is what's really funny is I've learned that dealing with politicians, they want to know what you're going to ask before you ask them, before they come and sit down. It's like, what kind of shit is this? You need time to prepare for questions. You should know your standpoints off the top of your cuff. When people ask me shit, I have to answer stuff on the cuff all the time. I have to continually change my, be ready to answer questions at a moment's notice. Time to load critters and go to Nebraska. Have a great day. All right, Bubba, greatly appreciate you, man. Keep it between the ditches. And good old slurring Dayton told us to leave if we don't like the immigrants. Absolutely, he did. Do you think that the public of Minnesota or the mosques of Minnesota are in danger now that he is going after Omar?
Oh, yeah!
Do I think that they're in danger? No. I don't believe that they're in danger. I think that I don't believe there's going to be any danger. I mean, it's simply just calling out her for being her. It's not an attack on Muslims. It's not an attack on the Somali people. It's an attack on her for anti-American rhetoric. I'm going to go watch for my ride. Talk to you tomorrow. All right, little Miss Airhorn, have fun. Actually, she has a very low approval rating amongst other Muslims also. There has been a lot of Muslims who've come out and spoke out against her, that she does not represent them, and that they're quite ashamed of the things that she does. So, Donald Trump is fired up. I can't wait to see what's next.
Oh, yeah!
I don't know that. Here's the thing. I don't know that he's so much fired up more than he is playing a strategic game. You know, redneck waxing. Well, I let a comment come out of my mouth, said if somebody wanted to donate a $1,000, that I would get my body waxed from the neck down, and I really didn't think there'd be any takers, but apparently a bunch of people thought that this would be a great idea, so it's gonna hurt. It isn't racist when Dayton says it. Nope, of course not. It's not Donald Trump. Uh, uh, I got her waxing liability form already. Oh. Everything from the neck down is getting waxed. Good morning, Mom. I see you. Yeah. Uh, yeah, my butthole too. Everything. I am not happy about this whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, Lolly Invasion has made an appearance, and Redneck Tech Support has made an appearance. No private. Listen, whatever their policy is, I hope they just reject it altogether. This is the only time I get to talk to Redneck Tech Support. Lothar, by the year 2025, Republican Party will hold socialist views. The Democrats majority will hold communist views, and by the year 2030, the majority of Republicans will be socialist, and Democrats will be the majority communist. Let that sink in. You know what the funny part is, Lothar? Is I'm not going to disagree with you that because you watch it how much the views of certain parties have changed in our nation's history and how much things have happened. I do not disagree with you. I don't know that it's going to go to that extent, but I definitely, because look at the Democrats now. During Obama, they were all for border protection, border security, and everything else. They were all for it. And that's the whole thing. Now their view is flip flop because you've got somebody like Donald Trump who's actually making something happen. Tanya, good morning. Cowboy Pipes, good morning. Good to see you. Yeah, so I mean, realistically, here's the thing. There's it's we never know. We can't exactly predict the future. Trans Am, good morning. I don't know to what extreme things will go to. I don't know that personally. There's always speculation. There's always, things that can be said or things that people can speculate on. But the truth is, when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, what are we doing? What are we talking about? What are we feeling bad about? If you let more non-whites that vote Democrat into the country, you'll all be socialists by 2030. It Justin, you're absolutely right. Uh, let's see here. What do you mean? You know he's nervous because what am I missing here? Apparently, I missed a whole something or another. Uh, um, links actually have to go through my moderators, either Redneck Tech Support or Vaporize, and they look at them before and they'll repost them. So, why would you feel bad about me getting waxed? I said it. Yeah, it's gonna suck, but don't feel bad about it. I mean, I'm a man of my word. I said I would, I'm not worried about it. So I mean, if it hurts, it hurts. I've been through worse. I just want to get it over with. That's what I want to do. I just really want to just get it over with, is what it comes down to. So, uh, yeah, we'll be streaming the waxing. It's pretty much going to be faced at my head the whole time because Twitch is very adamant about body parts being shown. So, say, I was surprised if you do wrong in a marriage, even a judge doesn't. Are safe juvenile court judge, so the system works. There's the one judge out there that does there's the one judge out there that does the whole I don't know, he's I forgot what they call him. He's become a social media phenomenon. He gives people breaks and I don't know, he gives people second chances, stuff like that. I forgot what his name is. But he's been a pretty big deal for a couple of years now. Oh, really? Wow. Mueller is on TV now to testify. Yeah, I'm not gonna go through that deal. Yeah, we're starting to buffer. I can see we're dropping frames at a pretty heavy rate. Maybe it's on my end. I'm not seeing any not seeing anything hit the yellow, but we'll keep an eye on it. No, I listen. If I didn't think that, let me explain something, guys. The ladies at Mill Pond Salon are extremely professional. The lady that's going to be doing it has been doing this for a while. She specializes in this. She's very good at it. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise, and people do this stuff all the time. There's pro swimmers literally go through and get waxed on a constant basis from head to toe. Well, I mean, I don't know about their head, but I know their entire bodies get waxed on a regular basis. And full body waxing is extremely common. It's not anything that is uncommon. I'm not doing anything that I've shown you videos. There's videos of it all over YouTube that people get it done. It's just abnormal because it's me. I've never had anything waxed ever. So it's a totally different scenario for me. Uh, so yeah, it's yeah, I'm in very good hands of this being done. I mean, if all of a sudden I pass out or something, or it looks like I'm getting sick to my stomach or something like that, they know to stop. They've been doing this for a while. You know, they're trained in what signs to look for if I'm having a health issue or something. They're very, very good at this. You know, I wouldn't be. This isn't like one of them things where I'm going to be laying at home and some random people are just going to be coming to do this. No, this is a 100% professional deal. So, you know, and really that's I'm not worried about that part of it. I'm not worried about that part at all. I mean, I'm in good hands at Mill Pond Salon. I would not trust anybody else to do this. I would not even have
Oh
put that challenge
yeah!
out there had I not known. Uh, had I not known, you know, yeah. So, no, there was no way I would have sold wax strips because I've never had this done. I don't know the overall ramifications. Uh, but yeah, but I'm a man of my word, and I will do. I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and that's plain and simple. Uh, that's I opened my mouth, I answered for it, you know, and that's what's going to happen. You know, I wouldn't care if it was private parts or not. Honestly, I mean, people get it done every day. It's not an uncommon thing, guys and women. You know, they get this stuff done. I guess this is something that people do on a regular. But for me, this is not something I've ever done. I'm old school. You just that's like no. No, I will not ever get it done again. I can promise you that. Yeah, I so it's listen, I've unfortunately I should have never started looking this up, but I looked up. There's literally guys who get their entire bodies waxed. There are guys who get their entire bodies waxed. So yeah, no, I'm good with it. It is what it is. The concept scares the shit out of me. I know there's people who do it, but this is not my thing. And I think it's more so the fact of, you know, so we'll see. Privates and bums. It's not a big deal. Is it going to hurt like hell? Probably. Um, is it something I'm looking forward to? Hell no. Yeah. You know, the fact that they had the guy getting up on all fours and telling him to spread his ass cheeks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This could be interesting. I think it's the fact that you have to put yourself in a completely vulnerable state, and that's just not me. They're very professional, things like that, but you don't do hair or beard, though. The salon won't, or I just no. My head is off limits for this. I put the bit up there a while back ago, but yeah. So, suppose we should check in on old Bob Mueller over here. See if he's saying anything good.
Of our report, we investigated a series of actions by the President towards the investigation. Based on Justice Department policy and principles of fairness, we decided we would not make a determination as to whether the President committed a crime. That was our decision then, and it remains our decision today. Let me say a further word about my appearance today. It is unusual for a prosecutor to testify about a criminal investigation. And given my role as a prosecutor, there are reasons why my testimony will necessarily be limited. First, public testimony could affect several ongoing matters. In some of these matters, court rules or judicial orders limit the disclosure of information to protect the fairness of the proceedings. And consistent with long-standing Justice Department policy, it would be inappropriate for me to comment in any way that could affect an ongoing matter. Second, the Justice Department has asserted privileges concerning investigative information and decisions, ongoing matters within the Justice Department, and deliberations within our office. These are Justice Department privileges that I will respect. The department has released a letter discussing the restrictions on my testimony. I therefore will not be able to answer questions about certain areas that I know are of public interest. For example, I am unable to address questions about the initial opening of the FBI's Russia or my appointment, or matters related to the so-called Steele dossier. These matters are subject of ongoing review by the department. Any questions on these topics should therefore be directed to the FBI or the Justice Department. As I explained when we closed the special counsel's office in May, our report contains our findings and analysis and the reasons for the decisions we made. We conducted an extensive investigation over 2 years. In writing the report, we stated the results of our investigation with precision. We scrutinized every word. I do not intend to summarize or describe the results of our work in a different way in the course of my testimony today. And as I said on May 29th, the report is my testimony, and I will stay within that text. And as I stated in May, I will not comment on the actions of the Attorney General or of Congress. I was appointed as a prosecutor, and I intend to adhere to that role and to the department standards that govern it. I'll be joined today by Deputy Special Counsel Aaron Zebley. Mr. Zebley has extensive experience as a federal prosecutor and at the FBI, where he served as my chief of staff. Mr. Zebley was responsible for the day-to-day oversight of the investigations conducted by our office. Now, I also want to again say thank you to the attorneys, the FBI agents, the analysts, the professional staff who helped us conduct this investigation in a fair and independent manner. These individuals who spent nearly 2 years of working on this matter were of the highest integrity. And let me say one more thing. Over the course of my career, I have seen a number of challenges to our democracy. The Russian government's effort to interfere in our election is among the most serious. And as I said on May 29th, this deserves the attention of every American. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I also want to point out the fact that he said their attempt to interfere.
Thank you. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions. I will begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. Director Mueller, the President has repeatedly claimed that your report found there was no obstruction and that it completely and totally exonerated him. But that is not what your report said, is it?
Correct. It is not what the report said.
And now, reading from page 2 of volume 2 of your report that's on the screen, you wrote, quote, "If we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the President clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, however, we are unable to reach that judgment," close quote. Now, does that say there was no obstruction?
No.
In fact, you were actually unable to conclude the President did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
Well, we, at the outset, determined that we, when it came to the President's culpability, we needed to go forward only after taking into account the OLC opinion that indicated that a president, a sitting president, cannot be indicted.
So the report did not conclude that he did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the President?
No.
Now, in fact, your report expressly states that it does not exonerate the President.
It does.
And your investigation actually found, quote, "multiple acts by the President that were capable of exerting undue influence over law enforcement investigations, including the Russian interference and obstruction investigations." Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, Director Mueller, can you explain in plain terms what that finding means so the American people can understand it?
Well, the finding indicates that the President was not that the President was not exculpated for the acts that he allegedly committed.
In fact, you were talking about incidents, quote, "in which the President sought to use his official power outside of usual channels," unquote, to exert undue influence over your investigations. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, am I correct that on page 7 of volume 2 of your report, you wrote, quote, "The President became aware that his own conduct was being investigated in an obstruction of justice inquiry. At that point, the President engaged in a second phase of conduct involving public attacks on the investigation, non-public efforts to control it, and efforts in both public and private to encourage witnesses not to cooperate with the investigation," close quote. So President Trump's efforts to exert undue influence over your investigation intensified after the President became aware that he personally was being investigated?
I stick with the language that you have in front of you,
Which
which comes from page 7 of volume 2.
Now, is it correct that if you concluded that the President committed the crime of obstruction, you could not publicly state that in your report or here today?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
is it correct that if you had concluded that the president committed the crime of obstruction, you could not publicly state that in your report or here today?
Well, I would say I could. The statement would be that you would not indict, and you would not indict because under the OLC opinion, a sitting president, excuse me, cannot be indicted, be unconstitutional.
So you could not state that because of the OLC opinion, if that would have been your conclusion?
OLC opinion was some guide, yes.
But under DOJ, under Department of Justice policy, the president could be prosecuted for obstruction of justice crimes after he leaves office, is correct?
True.
Thank you. Did any senior White House official refuse a request to be interviewed by you and your team?
I don't believe so.
The president?
Well, let me take that back. I would have to look at it, but I'm not certain that that was the case.
Did the president refuse a request to be interviewed by you and your team?
Yes.
Yes. And is it true that you tried for more than a year to secure an interview with the president?
Yes.
And is it true that you and your team advised the president's lawyer that, quote, an interview with the president is vital to our investigation, close
Yes.
quote?
Yes.
And is it true that you also, quote, stated that it is in the interest of the presidency and the public for an interview to take place, close quote?
Yes.
But the president still refused to sit for an interview by you or your team?
True. True.
And did you also ask him to provide written answers to questions on the 10 possible episodes of obstruction of justice crimes involving him?
Yes.
Did he provide
How do you have obstruction with no collusion?
any answers to a single question about whether he engaged in obstruction of justice crimes?
I would have to check on that. I'm not certain.
Director Mueller, we are grateful that you are here to explain your investigation and findings. Having reviewed your work, I believe anyone else who would engage in the conduct described in your report would have been criminally prosecuted. Your work is vitally important to this committee and the American people because no one is above the law. I'll now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we're moving, I know, understanding, just reiterating the 5-minute rule. Mr. Mueller, I have several questions, many of which that you just answered will be questioned here in a moment, but I want to lay some foundation. So we'll go through these fairly quickly. I'll talk slowly. I'm said that I talk fast. I will talk slowly.
Thank you, sir.
In your press conference, you stated any testimony from your office would not go beyond our report. We chose these words carefully. The work speaks for itself. I would not provide information beyond that which is already public in any appearance before Congress. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes.
Since closing the special counsel's office in May of 2019, have you conducted any additional interviews or obtained any new information in your role as special counsel?
In the wake of the report?
Since the closing of the office in May of 2019.
And the question was,
have you conducted any new interviews and any new witnesses, anything? And you can confirm you're no longer special counsel, correct?
I am no longer special counsel.
At any time with the investigation, was your investigation curtailed or stopped?
Morning, Brent.
Or hindered?
No.
Were you or your team provided any questions by members of Congress of the majority ahead of your hearing today?
No.
Your report states that your investigative team included 19 lawyers and approximately 40 FBI agents and analysts and accountants. Are those numbers accurate?
Could you repeat that, please?
40 FBI agents, 19 lawyers, intelligence analysts, and forensic accountants. Are those numbers accurate? This was included in your report.
Generally, yes.
Is it also true that you issued over 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants, obtained more than 230 orders for communication records, and 50 pen registers?
That went a little fast for me.
Okay. In your report, I'll make this very simple. You did a lot of work, correct?
Yes, that I agree.
A lot of subpoenas, a lot of pen registers.
A lot of subpoenas. Yes.
Okay, we'll walk this really slow if we need to.
A lot of search warrants.
All right, a lot of search warrants, a lot of things. So you're very thorough. In your opinion, very thorough. You listed this out in your report, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Is it true, the evidence gathered during your investigation, given the questions that you have just answered, is it true the evidence gathered during your investigation did not establish that the president was involved in the underlying crime related to Russian election interference as stated in Volume 1, page 7?
We found insufficient evidence.
I have no idea about that, Brent. You'd have to ask.
The president's
you'd have to whisper,
culpability.
Redneck Tech. I don't know about that.
So that would be a yes.
Without, I'm pardon.
We don't have
That'd
any
be a
way
yes.
to cancel
Yes.
it.
Thank you. Isn't it true the evidence did not establish that the president or those close to him were involved in the charged Russian computer hacking or active measure conspiracies, or that the president otherwise had unlawful relationships with any Russian official? Volume 2, page 76, correct?
I leave the answer to our report.
So as a yes. Is that any true your investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with Russian government in the election interference activity? Volume 1, page 2, volume 1, page 173.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Although your report states collusion is not so specific offense, and you said that this morning, or a term of art in federal criminal law, conspiracy is. In the colloquial context, are collusion and conspiracy essentially synonymous terms?
You're going to have to repeat that for me.
Collusion is not a specific offense or a term of art in the federal criminal law. Conspiracy is.
Yes.
In the colloquial context, known public context, collusion and conspiracy are essentially synonymous terms, correct?
No.
If no, on page 180 of volume 1 of your report, you wrote, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, as that crime is set forth in the General Federal Conspiracy Statute 18 U.S.C. 371. You said at your May 29th press conference and here today, you choose your words carefully. Are you sitting here today testifying something different than what your report states?
Well, what I'm asking is if you can give me the citation, I can look at the citation and evaluate whether it is accurate.
Okay, let me just be clarified. You stated that you would stay within the report. I just stated your report back to you. And you said that collusion and conspiracy were not synonymous terms. That was your answer, was no.
That's correct.
In that, page 180 of volume 1 of your report, it says, as defined in legal dictionaries, collusion is largely synonymous with conspiracy, as that crime is set forth in General Conspiracy Statute 18 U.S.C. 371. Now, you said you chose your words carefully. Are you contradicting your report right now?
Not when I read it.
So you would change your answer to yes then?
No. If you look at the language.
I'm reading your report, sir. It's a yes or no answer.
Page 180.
Page 180, volume 1.
Okay.
This was from your report.
Correct. And I'll leave it with the report.
So the report says, yes, they are synonymous.
Yes.
Hopefully, for finally, out of your own report, we can put to bed the collusion and conspiracy. One last question as we're going through. Did you ever look into other countries investigated in the Russian interference into our election? Were other countries investigated or found knowledge that they had interference in our election?
I'm not going to discuss other matters.
That I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from California.
Director Mueller, as you've heard from the chairman, we're mostly going to talk about obstruction of justice today, but the investigation of Russia's attack that started your investigation is why evidence of possible obstruction is serious. To what extent did the Russian government interfere in the 2016 presidential election?
Could you repeat that, ma'am?
To what extent did the Russian government interfere in the 2016 presidential election?
Well, particularly when it came to computer crimes and the like, the government was implicated.
So you wrote in volume 1 that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. You also described in your report that the then Trump campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, shared with a Russian operative, Kalimnik, the campaign strategy for winning Democratic votes in Midwestern states and internal polling data of the campaign. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
They also discussed the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's strategy for winning Democratic votes in Midwestern states. Months before that meeting, Manafort had caused internal data to be shared with Kalimnik, and the sharing continued for some period of time after their August meeting. Isn't that correct?
Accurate.
In fact, your investigation found that Manafort briefed Kalimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election, and that briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging, its internal polling data. It also included discussion of battleground states, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Did your investigation determine who requested the polling data to be shared with Kalimnik?
Well, I would direct you to the report and adopt what we have in the report with regard to that particular issue.
We don't have the redacted version. That's maybe another reason why we should get that for Volume 1. Based on your investigation, how could the Russian government have used this campaign polling data to further its sweeping and systematic interference in the 2016 presidential election?
That's a little bit out of our path.
Fair enough. Did your investigation find that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from one of the candidates winning?
Yes.
And which candidate would that be?
Well, it would be Trump.
Correct.
The president.
Now, the Trump campaign wasn't exactly reluctant to take Russian help. You wrote it expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now, was the investigation's determination, what was the investigation's determination regarding the frequency with which the Trump campaign made contact with the Russian government?
Well, I would have to refer you to the report on that.
Well, we went through and we counted 126 contacts between Russians or their agents and Trump campaign officials or their associates. So would that sound about right?
I can't say. I understand this statistic, and I believe it. I understand the statistic.
Well, Mr. Mueller, I appreciate your being here and your report. From your testimony and the report, I think the American people have learned several things. First, the Russians wanted Trump to win. Second, the Russians went on a sweeping cyber influence campaign. The Russians hacked the DNC, and they got the Democratic game plan for the election. The Russian campaign chairman met with Russian agents and repeatedly gave them internal data, polling, and messaging in the battleground states. So while the Russians were buying ads and creating propaganda to influence the outcome of the election, they were armed with inside information that they had stolen through hacking from the DNC and that they had been given by the Trump campaign chairman, Mr. Manafort. My colleagues will probe the efforts undertaken to keep this information from becoming public, but I think it's important for the American people to understand the gravity of the underlying problem that your report uncovered. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentlelady.
Good morning, Director. If you'll let me quickly summarize your opening statement this morning. You said in Volume 1 on the issue of conspiracy, the special counsel determined that the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. And then in Volume 2, for reasons that you explained, the special counsel did not make a determination on whether there was an obstruction of justice crime committed by the president. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right, now in explaining that special counsel did not make what you called a traditional prosecution or declination decision, the report on the bottom of page 2 of volume 2 reads as follows. The evidence we obtained about the president's actions and intent presents difficult issues that prevent us from conclusively determining that no criminal conduct occurred. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Now, I read that correctly?
Yes.
All right. Now, your report, and today you said at all times the special counsel team operated under, was guided by, and followed Justice Department policies and principles. So, which DOJ policy or principle sets forth a legal standard that an investigated person is not exonerated if their innocence from criminal conduct is not conclusively determined?
Can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah. Which DOJ policy or principle set forth a legal standard that an investigated person is not exonerated if their innocence from criminal conduct is not conclusively determined? Where does that language come from, Director? Where is the DOJ policy that says that? Can you, let me make it easier.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you give me an example other than Donald Trump where the Justice Department determined that an investigated person was not exonerated because their innocence was not conclusively determined?
I cannot, but this is a unique
Okay,
situation.
well, you can't, time is short. I've got 5 minutes. Let's just leave it at you can't find it, because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist. The special counsel's job, nowhere does it say that you were to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or that the special counsel report should determine whether or not to exonerate him. It's not in any of the documents. It's not in your appointment order. It's not in the special counsel regulations. It's not in the OLC opinions. It's not in the Justice Manual, and it's not in the principles of federal prosecution.
Damn.
Nowhere do those words appear together.
Get 'em.
Because respectfully, Director, it was not the special counsel's job to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or to exonerate him, because the bedrock principle of our justice system is a presumption of innocence. It exists for everyone. Everyone is entitled to it, including sitting presidents. And because there is a presumption of innocence, prosecutors never, ever need to conclusively determine it. Now, Director, the special counsel applied this inverted burden of proof that I can't find and you said doesn't exist anywhere in the department policies, and you used it to write a report. And the very first line of your report, says, and as you read this morning, it authorizes the special counsel to provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. That's the very first word of your report, right?
That's correct.
Here's the problem, Director. The special counsel didn't do that. On volume 1, you did. On volume 2, with respect to potential obstruction of justice, the special counsel made neither a prosecution decision or a declination decision. You made no decision. You told us this morning and in your report that you made no determination. So respectfully, Director, you didn't follow the special counsel regulations. It clearly says, write a confidential report about decisions reached. Nowhere in here does it say, write a report about decisions that weren't reached. You wrote 180 pages. 180 pages about decisions that weren't reached, about potential crimes that weren't charged or decided. And respectfully, by doing that, you managed to violate every principle and the most sacred of traditions about prosecutors not offering extra prosecutorial analysis about potential crimes that aren't charged. So Americans need to know this as they listen to the Democrats and socialists on the other side of the aisle, as they do dramatic readings from this report, that volume 2 of this report was not authorized under the law to be written. It was written to a legal standard that does not exist at the Justice Department. And it was written in violation of every DOJ principle about extra prosecutorial commentary. I agree with the chairman this morning when he said Donald Trump is not above the law. He's not. But he damn sure shouldn't be below the law, which is where volume 2 of this report puts him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Mueller, good morning. Your exchange with the gentlelady from California demonstrates what is at stake. The Trump campaign chair, Paul Manafort, was passing sensitive voter information and poll data to a Russian operative. And there were so many other ways that Russia subverted our democracy. Together with the evidence in Volume 1, I cannot think of a more serious need to investigate. So now I'm going to ask you some questions about obstruction of justice as it relates to Volume 2. On page 12 of Volume 2, you state, we determined that there were sufficient
Volume 2, by
and
the way,
legal
which they
basis
said should
to
not even
further
be in there.
investigate potential obstruction of justice issues involving the president. Is that correct?
And do you have the citation, ma'am?
Page 12, Volume 2.
And which portion of that page?
That is, we determined that there was a sufficient factual and legal basis to further investigate potential obstruction of justice issues involving the president. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your report also describes at least 10 separate instances of possible obstruction of justice that were investigated by you and your team. Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, the table of contents serves as a very good guide of some of the acts of that obstruction of justice that you investigated, and I put it up on the screen. On page 157 of Volume 2, you describe those acts and they range from the president's effort to curtail the special counsel's investigation, the president's further efforts to have the attorney general take over the investigation, the president's orders Don McGahn to deny that the president tried to fire the special counsel, and many others. Is that correct?
Yes.
I direct you now to what you wrote, Director Mueller. The president's pattern of conduct as a whole sheds light on the nature of the president's acts and the inferences that can be drawn about his intent. Does that mean you have to investigate all of his conduct to ascertain true motive?
No.
And when you talk about the president's pattern of conduct that include the 10 possible acts of obstruction that you investigated, is that correct? When you talk about the president's pattern of conduct, that would include the 10 possible acts of obstruction that you investigated, correct?
I direct you to the report for how that is characterized.
Thank you. Let me go to the screen again. And for each of those 10 potential instances of obstruction of justice, you analyze 3 elements of the crime of obstruction of justice: an obstructive act, a nexus between the act and an official proceeding, and corrupt intent. Is that correct?
Yes.
You wrote on page 178, volume 2, in your report about corrupt intent: actions by the president to end a criminal investigation into his own conduct to protect against personal embarrassment or legal liability would constitute a core example of corruptly motivated conduct. Is that correct?
Yes.
To the screen again, even with the evidence you did find, is it true, as you note on page 76 of volume 2, that the evidence does indicate that a thorough FBI investigation would uncover facts about the campaign and the president personally that the president could have understood to be crimes or that would give rise to legal, personal, and political concerns?
I rely on the language of the report.
Is that relevant to potential obstruction of justice? Is that relevant to potential obstruction of justice?
Yes.
You further elaborate on page 157, obstruction of justice can be motivated by a desire to protect non-criminal personal interests, to protect against investigations where underlying criminal liability falls into a gray area, or to avoid personal embarrassment. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have on the screen.
Is that correct on the screen?
Can you repeat the question? And now that I have the language on the screen.
Is it correct, as you further elaborate, obstruction of justice can be motivated by a direct desire to protect non-criminal personal interests, yes, to protect against investigations where underlying criminal liability falls into a gray area, yes, or to avoid? Is that true? Yes. And is it true that the impact... Pardon?
Can you read the last question?
The last question was...
I want to be certain I got it accurate.
No, the last question was the language on the screen asking you if that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Does a conviction of obstruction of justice result potentially in a lot of years of time in jail?
Yes. Well, again, can you repeat the question just to make certain that I have it accurate?
Does obstruction of justice warrant a lot of time in jail, yes, if you were convicted?
Yes.
And in
Time of the gentlelady has expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by reading the special counsel regulations by which you were appointed. It reads, quote, at the conclusion of the special counsel's work, he or she shall provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declinations decisions reached by the special counsel. That correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when a regulation uses the word shall provide, does it mean that the individual is in fact obligated to provide what's being demanded by the regulation or statute, meaning you don't have any wiggle room, right?
I'd have to look more closely at the statute.
Well, I just read it to you. Okay. Now, volume 2, page 1, your report boldly states we determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment. Is that correct?
I'm trying to find that citation, Congressman.
Director, could you speak more directly into the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, it's volume 2, page...
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes, volume 2, page 1. It said we determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment.
Yes.
That's right in the beginning. Now, since you decided under the OLC opinion that you couldn't prosecute a sitting president, meaning President Trump, why did we have all of this investigation of President Trump that the other side is talking about when you knew that you weren't going to prosecute him?
Well, you don't know where the investigation is going to lie, and the OLC opinion itself says that you can continue the investigation even though you are not going to indict the president.
Okay, well, if you're not going to indict the president, then you just continue fishing. And that's my observation. Well, sure you. My time is limited. Sure, you can indict other people, but you can't indict the sitting president, right?
That's true.
Okay. Now, there are 182 pages in raw evidentiary material, including hundreds of references to 302, which are interviews by the FBI, for individuals who've never been cross-examined and which did not comply with the special counsel's governing regulation to explain the prosecution or declination decisions reached, correct?
And where are you reading from on that?
I'm reading from my question.
Then could you repeat it?
Okay. You have 182 pages of raw evidentiary material with hundreds of references to 302s who were never been cross-examined and which didn't comply with the governing regulation to explain the prosecution or declination decisions reached.
This is one of those areas which I declined to discuss.
Okay, then
and would direct you to the report itself.
Okay. Well, I looked at the 182 pages of it. Let me switch gears. Mr. Shabbat and I were on this committee during the Clinton impeachment. Now, while I recognize that the independent counsel statute under which Kenneth Starr operated is different from the special counsel statute, he, in a number of occasions in his report, stated that the President Clinton's actions may have risen to impeachable conduct, recognizing that it is up to the House of Representatives to determine what conduct is impeachable. You never used the term raising to impeachable conduct for any of the 10 instances that the gentlewoman from Texas did. Is it true that there's nothing in Volume 2 of the report that says that the president may have engaged in impeachable conduct?
Well, we have studiously kept in
the guy behind him is like, yes.
Center of our investigation.
Yes.
Our mandate.
Yes, stupid.
And our mandate does not go to other ways of addressing conduct. Our mandate goes to developing the report and turning the report into the Attorney General.
With due respect, it seems to me, that there are a couple of statements that you made, that said that this is not for me to decide, and the implication is that this is for this committee to decide. Now, you didn't use the word impeachable conduct like Starr did. There was no statute to prevent you from using the word impeachable conduct. And I go back to what Mr. Radcliffe said, and that is that even the president is innocent until proven guilty. My time is up.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd just like to restate that Mr. Nadler said about your career. It's a model of rectitude, and I thank you.
Sir.
Based upon your investigation, how did President Trump react to your appointment as special counsel?
Again, I send you the report for where that is stated.
Well, there is a quote from page 78 of your report, volume 2, which reads, when Sessions told the president that a special counsel had been appointed, the president slumped back in his chair and said, quote, oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm effed, unquote. Did Attorney General Sessions tell you about that little talk?
I'm not
Director,
sure.
please speak into the microphone.
Oh, surely. My apologies. I am not certain of the person who originally copied that quote.
Okay, well, Sessions apparently said it, and one of his aides had it in his notes too, which I think you had, but that's become record. He wasn't pleased. He probably wasn't pleased with the special counsel, and particularly you, because of your outstanding reputation.
Correct.
Prior to your appointment, the Attorney General recused himself from the investigation
fact
because
that
of his
they've had
role
bad
in
business
the
dealing,
2016 campaign.
and the
Is
fact
that not
that,
correct?
Correct.
Recusal
denied
means the
Mueller
Attorney
for
General
the
cannot be
FBI.
involved in the investigation. Is that correct?
That's the effect of recusal, yes.
And so instead, another Trump appointee, as you know Mr. Sessions was, Mr. Rosenstein became in charge of it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wasn't Attorney General Sessions following the rules and professional advice of the Department of Justice ethics folks when he recused himself from the investigation?
Yes.
And yet the president repeatedly expressed his displeasure at Sessions' decision to follow those ethics rules to recuse himself from oversight of that investigation. Is that not correct?
That's accurate based on what is written in the report.
And the president's reaction to the recusal is noted in the report. Mr. Bannon recalled that the president was mad as Bannon had ever seen him, and he screamed at McGahn about how weak Sessions was. Do you recall that from the report?
That's in the report, yes.
Despite
All
knowing
right,
that
thank
Attorney
you,
General
Fishing
Sessions
Hudson
was supposed to
Gaming
be
Chick with a rating
was not
party of
supposed to be involved in the
18.
investigation, the president still
Make sure
tried
y'all
to get
check
the
her
Attorney General
out.
to unrecuse himself after you were appointed special counsel.
Oh,
Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, your investigation found that at some point after your appointment,
Yeah.
quote, the president called Sessions at his home and asked if he would
Pause this for a
unrecuse
second.
himself.
We currently have Robert Mueller on the stand. We are watching this shit show. Thank you very much for the raid. As always, Gabby, we greatly appreciate you. Get her link up there. Oh, it is up there. Perfect. So, anyways, thanks for the raid. We greatly appreciate you. Make sure y'all check her out. Give her a follow. So, yeah. We're going to keep watching this here. The shit show we call Congress. Our Judiciary Committee.
Is that not true?
It's true.
Now, that wasn't the first time the president asked Sessions to unrecuse himself, was it?
I know there were at least 2 occasions.
And one of them was with Flynn, and one of them was when Sessions and McGahn flew to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the president. Sessions recalled that the president pulled him aside to speak alone and suggested he should do this unrecusal act. Correct?
Correct.
And then when Michael Flynn, a few days after Flynn entered a guilty plea for lying to federal agents and indicated his intent to cooperate with that investigation, Trump asked to speak to Sessions alone again in the Oval Office and again asked Sessions to unrecuse himself. True?
I refer you to the report for that.
Page 109, Volume 2. Thank you, sir. Do you know of any point when the president personally expressed anger or frustrations at Sessions?
I'd have to pass on that.
You recall, and I think it's at page 78 of Volume 2, the president told Sessions, you were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to protect me, or words to that effect.
Correct.
And is the Attorney General supposed to be the Attorney General of the United States of America or the consigliere for the president?
United States of America.
Thank you, sir. In fact, you wrote in your report that the president repeatedly sought to convince Sessions to unrecuse himself so Sessions could supervise the investigation in a way that would restrict its scope. Is that correct?
Rely on the report.
How could Sessions have restricted the scope of your investigation?
I want to point out something. Now, mind you, it has already been... I want to point something out that we've already heard, and they keep referring to Volume 2, which we found out that Volume 2 shouldn't even been written. Volume 2 shouldn't even been written. Volume 2 shouldn't even been a thing of this report. Okay, but yet this is the only thing they have to go on, and they continue to do this. You know, because they're presuming him guilty and continue to find him, and they keep putting on this deal. But here's my thing. If you go all the way to the beginning of this, how this all started, if we go all the way to why this all started, now basically they're playing on public perception. I want you to understand this. They're playing on public perception and how you're going to perceive this. Okay? They want the people to keep looking at Volume 2 and ignore what everybody else said. You won't hear the other guy's statement on most mainstream media channels. The fact that Volume 2 should have been in there. You won't hear that. according to DOJ policies and things like that. You will not hear that on you'll hear it probably on Fox, and that's about it. Okay? All right? So here's what's going to happen. This is going to be, they're going to keep referring to the volume 2 of this. But my question, again, if the entire basis for this investigation started on a false FISA report that was not vetted, that was lied about to get there, why do we even have this part? We shouldn't even be having this committee. This committee should not even be going on. This shouldn't even be happening. This report should be null and void. Okay. This entire thing should be null and void just based on that.
Well, I'm not going to speculate. If he, quite obviously, if he took over or was Attorney General, he would have greater latitude in his actions that would enable him to do things that otherwise he could not.
On page 113, you said the president believed that an unrecused attorney general would play a protective role and could shield the president from the ongoing investigation. Regardless of all that, I want to thank you, Director Mueller, for your life of rectitude and service to our country. It's clear from your report and the evidence that the president wanted former Attorney General Sessions to violate the Justice Department ethics rules by taking over your investigation and improperly interfering with it to protect himself and his campaign. Your findings are so important because in America, nobody is above the law. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman for yielding back. The gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you. Director Mueller, my Democratic colleagues were very disappointed in your report. They were expecting you to say something along the lines of, here's why President Trump deserves to be impeached, much as Ken Starr did relative to President Clinton back about 20 years ago. Well, you didn't. So their strategy had to change. Now they allege that there's plenty of evidence in your report to impeach the president, but the American people just didn't read it. And this hearing today is their last best hope to build up some sort of groundswell across America to impeach President Trump. That's what this is really all about today. Now, a few questions. On page 103 of Volume 2 of your report, when discussing the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting, you reference, quote, the firm that produced the Steele reporting, unquote. The name of that firm was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
And you're on page 103?
103, that's correct, Volume 2. When you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that. And
let me just help. It was. It's not a trick question. Right? It was Fusion GPS. Now, Fusion GPS produced the opposition research document widely known as the Steele dossier, and the owner of Fusion GPA was someone named Glenn Simpson. Are you familiar with?
This is outside my purview.
Okay. Glenn Simpson was never mentioned in the 448-page Mueller report, was he?
Well, as I say, it's outside my purview, and it's being handled in the department by others.
Okay. Well, he was not. 448 pages. The owner of Fusion GPS that did the Steele dossier, that started all this, he's not mentioned in there. Let me move on. At the same time, Fusion GPS was working to collect opposition research on Donald Trump from foreign sources on behalf of the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. It also was representing a Russian-based company, Prevazon, which had been sanctioned by the U.S. government. Are you aware of that?
It's outside my purview.
Okay, thank you. One of the key players I'll go to something different. One of the key players in the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting was Natalia Wisniewska, who you described in your report as a Russian attorney who advocated for the repeal of the Magnitsky Act. Wisniewska had been working with none other than Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS since at least early 2014. Are you aware of that?
Outside my purview.
Thank you. But you didn't mention that or her connections to Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS in your report at all. Let me move on. Now, NBC News has reported the following, quote, Russian lawyer Natalia Vizhnevskaya says she first received the supposedly incriminating information she brought to Trump Tower describing alleged tax evasion and donation to Democrats from none other than Glenn Simpson, the Fusion GPS owner. You didn't include that in the report, and I assume you're saying that would be
a matter being handled by others at the Department of Justice.
Okay, thank you. Now, your report spends 14 pages discussing the June 9th, 2016 Trump Tower meeting. It would be fair to say, would it not, that you spent significant resources investigating that meeting?
Well, I refer you to the report.
Okay, and President Trump wasn't at the meeting?
No, he was not.
Thank you. Now, in stark contrast to the actions of the Trump campaign, we know that the Clinton campaign did pay Fusion GPS to gather dirt on the Trump campaign from persons associated with foreign governments. But your report doesn't mention a thing about Fusion GPS in it, and you didn't investigate Fusion GPS's connections to Russia. So let me just ask you this. Can you see that from neglecting to mention Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS's involvement with the Clinton campaign, to focusing on a brief meeting at the Trump Tower that produced nothing, to ignoring the Clinton campaign's own ties to Fusion GPS, why some view your report as a pretty one-sided attack on the president?
Well, I tell you, it is still outside my purview.
All right. And I would just note finally that I guess it's just by chance, by coincidence, that the things left out of the report tended to be favorable to the president. My time's expired.
Thank you, Director Mueller. I'd like to get us back on track here. Your investigation found that President Trump directed White House counsel Don McGahn to fire you. Isn't that correct?
True.
And the president claimed that he wanted to fire you because you had supposed conflicts of interest. Isn't that correct?
True.
Now, you had no conflicts of interest that required your removal. Isn't that a fact?
That's correct.
And in fact, Don McGahn advised the president that the asserted conflicts were, in his words, silly and not real conflicts. Isn't that true?
I refer to the report on that episode.
Well, page 85 of Volume 2 speaks to that. And also, Director Mueller, DOJ ethics officials confirmed that you had no conflicts that would prevent you from serving as special counsel. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
But despite Don McGahn and the Department of Justice guidance, around May 23rd, 2017, the president, quote, prodded McGahn to complain to Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein about these supposed conflicts of interest, correct?
Correct.
And McGahn declined to call Rosenstein, telling the president that it would look like still trying to meddle in the investigation and knocking out Mueller would be another fact used to claim obstruction of justice. Isn't that correct?
Generally so, yes.
And in other words, Director Mueller, the White House counsel told the president that if he tried to remove you, that could be another basis to allege that the president was obstructing justice, correct?
That is generally correct, yes.
Now, I'd like to review what happened after the president was warned about obstructing justice. On Tuesday,
I'm sorry, Congressman, do you have a citation for the...
Yes, volume 2, page 81.
Thank you.
And 82. Now, I'd like to review what happened after the president was warned about obstructing justice. It's true that on Tuesday, June 13th, 2017, the president dictated a press statement stating he had, quote, no intention of firing you, correct?
Correct.
But the following day, June 14th, the media reported for the first time that you were investigating the president for obstructing of justice, correct?
Correct.
And then, after learning for the first time that he was under investigation, the very next day, the president, quote, issued a series of tweets acknowledging the existence of the obstruction investigation and criticizing it. Isn't that correct?
Generally so.
And then, on Saturday, June 17th, 2 days later, the president called Don McGahn at home from Camp David on a Saturday to talk about you. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
What was the significant? What was significant about that first weekend phone call that Don McGahn took from President Trump?
Well, I'm going to ask you to rely on what we wrote about those.
Well, you wrote in your report that on at page 85, volume 2, that on Saturday, June 17, 2017, the president called McGahn at home to have the special counsel removed. Now, did the president call Don McGahn more than once that day?
Well, I gave...
I think it was 2 calls.
Sorry about that.
On page 85 of your report, you wrote, quote, on the first call, McGahn recalled that the president said something like, quote, you got to do this, you got to call Rod, correct?
Correct.
And your investigation and report found that Don McGahn was perturbed, to use your words, by the president's request to call Rod Rosenstein to fire him. Isn't that correct?
Well, there was a continuous colloquy. There was a continuous involvement of Don McGahn in responding to the president's entreaties.
And he did not want to put himself in the middle of that. He did not want to have a role in asking the Attorney General to fire the special counsel, correct?
Well, I would again refer you to the report and the way it is characterized in the report.
Thank you. At volume 2, page 85, it states that he didn't want to have the Attorney General, he didn't want to have a role in trying to fire the Attorney General. So at this point, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mueller, well, first, let me ask a unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to submit this article, Robert Mueller Unmasked, for the record.
Without objection.
Now, Mr. Mueller, who wrote the 9-minute comments you read at your May 29th press conference?
I'm not going to get into that.
Okay, so that's what I thought. You didn't write it. A 2013 puff piece in the Washingtonian about Comey said basically when Comey called, you drop everything you were doing. It gave examples. You're having dinner with your wife and daughter. Comey calls, you drop everything and go. The article quoted Comey as saying, if a train were coming down the track, and I quote, at least Bob Mueller will be standing on the tracks with me. Yeah. You and James Comey have been good friends or were good friends for many years, correct?
No, we were business associates. We both started off in the Justice Department about this.
You were good friends. You can work together and not be friends, but you and Comey were friends.
We were friends.
That's my question. Thank you for getting to the answer. Now, before you were appointed as special counsel, had you talked to James Comey in the preceding 6 months?
No.
When you were appointed as special counsel, was President Trump's firing of Comey something you anticipated investigating, potentially obstruction of justice?
I'm not going to get into that. That's internal deliberations in the Justice Department.
Actually, it goes to your credibility, and maybe you've been away from the courtroom for a while. Credibility is always relevant. It's always material, and that goes for you, too. You're a witness before us. Let me ask you, when you talked to President Trump the day before he appointed, or you were appointed as special counsel, you were talking to him about FBI director position again. Did he mention the firing of James Comey?
Not as a candidate. I was asked.
Did he mention the firing of James Comey in your discussion with him?
He is just whooping him.
Pardon?
Cannot remember. Don't believe so, but I'm not going to be specific.
You don't remember. But if he did, you could have been a fact witness as to the president's comments and state of mind on firing James Comey.
I suppose that's possible.
Yeah. So Most prosecutors want to make sure there's no appearance of impropriety, but in your case, you hired a bunch of people that did not like the president. Let me ask you, when did you first learn of Peter Strzok's animus toward Donald Trump?
In the summer of 2017.
You didn't know before he was hired?
I'm sorry, what did
you didn't know before he was hired for your team?
Know what?
Peter Strzok hated
Got him.
Okay.
You didn't know that before he was made part of your team. Is that what you're saying?
I did not know that.
All right. When did you first learn?
When we did find out, I acted swiftly to have him reassigned elsewhere in the FBI.
Well, there's some discussion about how swift that was, but when did you learn of the ongoing affair he was having with Lisa Page?
About the same time I learned from Strzok.
Did you ever order anybody to investigate the deletion of all of their texts off of their government phones?
Once we found that Peter Strzok was an author of...
Did you ever order, well, you're not answering my question. Did you order an investigation into deletion and reformatting of their government phones?
No, there was an IG investigation ongoing.
Well, listen, regarding collusion or conspiracy, you didn't find evidence of any agreement, I'm quoting you, among the Trump campaign officials and any Russia-linked individuals to interfere with our U.S. election, correct?
Correct.
So you also note in the report that an element of any of those obstructions you referenced requires a corrupt state of mind, correct?
Corrupt intent, correct.
Right. And if somebody knows they did not conspire with anybody from Russia to affect the election, and they see the big Justice Department with people that hate that person coming after them, and then a special counsel appointed who hires dozen or more people that hate that person, and he knows he's innocent. He's not corruptly acting in order to see that justice is done. What he's doing is not obstructing justice. He is pursuing justice, and the fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
I take your
Gentleman's
question.
time has expired. The witness may answer the question.
I take your question.
The gentleman from Florida.
Director Mueller, I'd like to get back to your findings covering June of 2017. There was a bombshell article that reported that the President of the United States was personally under investigation for obstruction of justice. And you said in your report on page 90, volume 2, and I quote, "News of the obstruction investigation prompted the President to call McGahn and seek to have the special counsel
Volume
removed,"
2 again.
close quote. And then in your report, you wrote about multiple calls from the President to White House counsel Don McGahn. And regarding the second call, you wrote, and I quote, "McGahn recalled that the President was more direct, saying something like, 'Call Rod. Tell Rod that Mueller has conflicts and can't be the special counsel.' McGahn recalled the President telling him, 'Mueller has to go, and call me back when you do it.'" Director Mueller, did McGahn understand what the President was ordering him to do?
I direct you to what we've written in the report in terms of characterizing his feelings.
And in the report, it says, quote, "McGahn understood the President to be saying that the special counsel had to be removed." You also said on page 86 that, quote, "McGahn considered the President's request to be an inflection point, and he wanted to hit the brakes, and he felt trapped, and McGahn decided he had to resign." McGahn took action to prepare to resign. Isn't that correct?
I direct you again to the report.
And in fact, that very day he went to the White House, and quoting your report, you said, quote, "He then drove to the office to pack his belongings and submit his resignation letter," close quote.
That is directly from the report.
It is. And before he resigned, however, he called the President's chief of staff, Reince Priebus, and he called the President's senior advisor, Steve Bannon. Do you recall what McGahn told them?
Whatever he was said will appear in the report.
It is. And it says on page 87, quote, Priebus recalled that McGahn said that the president asked him to do crazy expletive. In other words, crazy stuff. The White House counsel thought that the president's request was completely out of bounds. He said the president asked him to do something crazy. It was wrong. And he was prepared to resign over it. Now, these are extraordinarily troubling events, but you found White House counsel McGahn to be a credible witness. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Director Mueller, the most important question I have for you today is why? Director Mueller, why did the President of the United States want you fired?
I can't answer that question.
Well, on page 89 in your report on volume 2, you said, and I quote, substantial evidence indicates that the president's attempts to remove the special counsel were linked to the special counsel's oversight of investigations that involve the president's conduct, and most immediately, to reports that the president was being investigated for potential obstruction of justice, close quote. Director Mueller, you found evidence, as you lay out in your report, that the president wanted to fire you because you were investigating him for obstruction of justice. Isn't that correct?
That's what it says in the report, yes. And I stand behind the report.
Director Mueller, that shouldn't happen in America. No president should be able to escape investigation by abusing his power. But that's what you testified to in your report. The president ordered you fired. The White House counsel knew it was wrong. The president knew it was wrong. In your report, it says there's also evidence the president knew he should not have made those calls to McGahn. But the president did it anyway. He did it anyway. Anyone else who blatantly interfered with a criminal investigation like yours would be arrested and indicted on charges of obstruction of justice. Director Mueller, you determined that you were barred from indicting a sitting president. We've already talked about that today. That is exactly why this committee must hold the president accountable. I yield back.
Yeah, bullshit.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Alabama.
Director Mueller, you just said in response to two different lines of questionings that you would refer, as it relates to this firing discussion, that I would refer you to the report in the way it was characterized in the report. Importantly, the president never said fire Mueller or in the investigation, and one doesn't necessitate the other. And McGahn, in fact, did not resign. He stuck around for a year and a half. On March 24th, Attorney General Barr informed the committee that he had received the special counsel's report, and it was not until April 18th that the Attorney General released the report to Congress and the public. When you submitted your report to the Attorney General, did you deliver a redacted version of the report so that he would be able to release it to Congress and the public without delay, pursuant to his announcement of his intention to do so during his confirmation?
All right, y'all. This is here's the deal. This is becoming a shit show. I have to get going. I have to go to work. I have a job to do, and my taxes are paying for this bullshit. So, with that being said, here's the deal. One thing I didn't know is that Volume 2, as confirmed by another congressperson, should not even been in this report, which is the entire basis of this deal. I also have said, and it will continue to say, that if the initial FISA application, which started all this, which had not been vetted, which had not been thoroughly investigated, was falsified, which it was, which was absolutely insane, out of hand, and absolutely wrong, how in the hell can you possibly be having this committee? if this was all started on a hoax by basically the Hillary campaign, also the Democratic National Convention, okay, there's a problem. And people seem to overlook that part. People's blatant hate for Donald Trump will allow them to overlook the law, will allow them to say, well, whatever, it's the end result that counts. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That is not how that works. That is not how that works. Just so y'all know, that's not how that works by any means. You know, here's the issue that I have. The issue that I have in a long-term deal is the fact that when you look at the overall evidence that was presented, do you know that in an actual court of law that this entire case would be thrown out based on that? Do you know that in a court of law that all this stuff would have been thrown out? That everything that he found in these reports would have been inadmissible? But apparently that doesn't matter. Because as long as you hate Trump, you can do whatever you want to do. Okay? That's really what it comes down to. Okay? And that's the part that bothers me. That's the part that gets me about this whole deal. How did we get to this road? Not only that, we also found out that Volume 2, which is what they're playing their entire obstruction on, of justice on, okay, was not what Mueller was sent to do. This is what Mueller was not supposed to be doing. Okay, this is not what Mueller's job was. Mueller testified there was no collusion by Donald Trump. No, because it is a special session. I don't know. I mean, I could file, but the odds of something. I mean, there's probably people. There's people who are definite Donald Trump supporters, and believe you me, if Donald Trump had a way to do it, it would already be done. But the issue now, in turn, becomes the fact that okay, the Democrats have not only gone and made a mockery of our country, now they're making a mockery of our justice system. And at what point in time does our justice system say this is bullshit? I've had enough. So now they say it's their job to hold the president accountable. It's your job to hold the president accountable, but yet the impeachment vote got shot down. Or tabled, as they like to say. So we're going to head over to Touring News. I believe he's also going through this this deal here. So let me, we'll go over it. You guys know what to do. Blow his shit up. He loves that when that happens. But know this, okay? For her and her company to work this hospital, she just got word today that they will be able to do EP cases starting. Nice. Yeah, I'm the money that has been spent on this is ridiculous. I know right now it's right around $40 million is what has been wasted on this, and for what? So remember this. Remember the people that are up here. Remember the people that you have the power to vote for. Remember, now I want to remind you that when it came to impeaching Bill Clinton, Nadler was adamantly opposed to it. Jerry Nadler, the head of the committee, was adamantly opposed to it. Go back if you want. Go watch Nadler's approach to the Bill Clinton impeachment. Go see his comments then. You'll see they adversely contest what he's saying now. And it's simply a hate for Donald Trump. Despite the good things he's done for this country, it is a complete hate for Donald Trump because he's broke the mold of politicians. He has broke the Democrat Loctite that has been on this country for entirely way too long. So, anyways, tell Stacy congratulations, Chris. Anyways, we're gonna I got to get up off of here. I've got to get a bunch of stuff done today. Today is another long day for me, so I need to go get loaded up and get on the road. Until then, y'all keep them cold, keep the bottoms up. Y'all know what to do. We're gonna go into Raid Touring News, blow his shit up. Be about 4 seconds here, so make sure you get your redneck invasion emojis going here. And we are going to raid.